About 10 years ago, I worked at a cemetery. The pay was good, and the job was pretty easy. Most nights, I just drove around in my truck to make sure no kids were causing trouble. After a while, I got used to the creepy vibe of the place. I usually finished my shift around 6 a.m. and didn't go to bed until about 11 a.m. One night, while I was getting ready for bed at 10:30, my boss called. He asked if I had seen anything unusual the night before. I hadn't, so I said no. Then he told me that a grave had been defaced. I felt a pang of guilt, thinking I should have noticed something. He asked me to come back and help clean it up, and I agreed. When I arrived, I was shocked by what I saw. The grave had been covered in horrible words and drawings. It was even worse when I realized the grave belonged to a child who had passed away just a few months earlier at the age of 8. I felt a mix of anger and sadness. Who would do something so terrible to a child? My boss and I checked the surveillance footage, but the cemetery was huge, and we only had one camera that didn't cover much area. We didn't see anything unusual. My boss reported the incident to the town, and for the next few weeks, they sent some new guys to help me keep watch from dusk till dawn. During that time, nothing happened. My watch partner and I became good friends, and we often speculated about who might have done the defacing. After a while, it seemed like a one-time incident, and the extra guards left. Soon, it was just me again. One night, as I started my shift and patrolled the back of the cemetery, I noticed something strange. A couple of 100 feet away from the child's grave, I saw a dark shape lying on the ground. I felt a chill run down my spine. I slowly approached, shining my flashlight around. When I got closer, I was terrified to see a black figure suddenly jump up and sprint away into the darkness, disappearing in seconds. I was frozen in shock for a moment, but then I ran back to my truck and called the police. When I returned to the child's grave, I was horrified by what I found. In front of the gravestone was a small hole, not dug by a shovel but more like someone had used their hands. It was only about a foot deep, but it was clear someone had tried to dig up the child's grave. I felt sick. What could they have been trying to do? We never figured out who did it, but thankfully, it never happened again. The town hired 2 new people to keep watch, and one of us always monitored that grave specifically while the others patrolled the area. They also increased security during the day. To this day, that was the most disturbing thing I experienced while working at the cemetery. No ghosts or creatures, just the terrible actions of a human being. After the incident with the child's grave, things at the cemetery changed. The new security team took their roles seriously, and we all felt a sense of responsibility to protect the resting places of those who had passed. The atmosphere was tense, but we were determined to ensure nothing like that ever happened again. As the weeks went by, I found myself more vigilant than ever. I often walked the grounds during my shifts, keeping an eye on the child's grave and the surrounding area. My watch partner and I would share stories to lighten the mood, but the memory of that dark figure haunted me. Who were they? What drove them to desecrate a grave? One night, while I was patrolling, I noticed something unusual near the edge of the cemetery. A flickering light caught my attention. I approached cautiously, my heart racing. As I got closer, I realized it was a small campfire, and around it were a group of teenagers. They were laughing and joking, completely unaware of the sacred ground they were on. I felt a mix of anger and concern. I approached them, shining my flashlight in their direction. "Hey! What are you doing here?" I called out, trying to sound authoritative. The laughter stopped, and they turned to face me, their expressions shifting from surprise to guilt. "We were just hanging out," one of them said, trying to sound casual. "We didn't mean any harm." I could see they were holding drinks and snacks, and I knew they weren't just there to enjoy the peacefulness of the cemetery. "This isn't a place for partying," I said firmly. "You need to leave. Now." They hesitated, exchanging glances, but eventually, they packed up their things and left. I felt a sense of relief wash over me, but I also knew this wouldn't be the last time I'd have to deal with troublemakers. As the months passed, I continued to keep watch over the cemetery. The child's grave remained untouched, and the new security measures seemed to be working. However, I couldn't shake the feeling that the dark figure from that night was still out there, lurking somewhere. One evening, as I was finishing my shift, I noticed a figure standing by the child's grave. My heart raced as I approached, ready to confront whoever it was. But as I got closer, I realized it was a woman, her face illuminated by the moonlight. She looked distraught, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice softening. She turned to me, and I could see the pain in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm the child's mother. I come here to talk to him." My heart sank. I hadn't expected this. "I didn't know," I said gently. "I'm sorry for your loss." She nodded, wiping her tears. "I just wanted to be close to him. I can't believe someone would do something so horrible." I felt a wave of empathy wash over me. "We're doing everything we can to protect this place," I assured her. "I promise it won't happen again." From that night on, I made it a point to check on her whenever I was on duty. I learned her name was Sarah, and she visited the grave regularly. We talked about her son, and I listened to her stories. It became a routine that brought both of us comfort. As time went on, the cemetery felt less eerie and more like a place of remembrance. I realized that while there were dark moments, there were also connections and healing. The community rallied around Sarah, and together, we honored her son's memory. The dark figure never returned, and the cemetery became a safe haven once more. I learned that even in the face of human cruelty, there is always the possibility of compassion and understanding. And in that, I found a sense of peace that I never expected to discover while working in a place that once felt so haunted. A few years ago, I had just graduated high school and was enjoying my summer vacation. I started working full-time at the school I had just finished attending because I needed money for college. My family wanted me to go with them to my grandparents' house in Virginia, but I said no because I had already bought tickets for a concert on the same day they were leaving. I didn't mind staying home. What 18-year-old wouldn't want a whole week alone in the house? That day, I really wanted some fried chicken, so I went out to get some. On my way back, I hit a traffic jam due to an accident on the main road. I decided to take a shortcut using Google Maps. As I passed a mechanic shop, I noticed a car with only one working headlight. It seemed strange that it turned on just as I drove by, and I felt a little uneasy when it started following me. I tried to brush it off as paranoia, but as I got closer to my neighborhood, I realized the car was still behind me. My anxiety grew because I was low on gas. I had two choices. I could either go home and risk the car following me, or I could drive around and see if it continued to follow. Driving around felt risky, especially since I might run out of gas and be stuck with this creepy car. I decided to head home, but when I turned onto my street, my heart sank. The car followed me right into my driveway. I felt trapped. I put my car in reverse, and to my horror, the car behind me did the same, blocking my way out. I tried moving forward, but they kept following me. It felt like a nightmare. Finally, I pulled further up the driveway and turned my car around to face them. By this point, they were almost halfway up my driveway. I was scared, alone, and furious. I grabbed a small pocket knife I kept in my car and stepped out, shining my headlights into their faces. I shouted at them, hoping to scare them off. To my surprise, they slowly backed away and parked down the street. I quickly ran inside and called the police. Looking out the window, I couldn't see them anymore, but my heart raced with fear. Just then, I heard footsteps outside my house. Someone was trying to force open a window. Panic set in as I realized they were testing every door and window to get in. I knew everything was locked, but I was terrified they would find a way. I ran upstairs and locked myself in my bedroom, then called 911 again for an update. Thankfully, the operator told me the police were just a minute away. Suddenly, I heard banging on the front door, and the man was yelling for me to open it. Just then, 2 police cars pulled into my driveway. I watched through the window as they put the man in handcuffs. He tried to convince the officers that he hadn't done anything wrong, but they weren't buying it. It turned out he was heavily under the influence of drugs and alcohol. He never explained why he had followed me or tried to break into my house, but I was relieved that I wouldn't have to worry about him for a long time. This experience taught me to trust my instincts and be aware of my surroundings. It was a terrifying night, but I was grateful for the quick response of the police and the safety of my home. After the police took the man away, I stood in my living room, still shaking from the adrenaline. The officers reassured me that I was safe now and asked if I wanted to file a report. I nodded, grateful for their presence. They took my statement and asked me a few questions about what had happened. I could see the concern in their eyes, and it made me feel a little better knowing they were taking the situation seriously. Once they finished, one of the officers, Officer Martinez, offered me some advice. Make sure to keep your doors and windows locked, even during the day. And if you ever feel unsafe, don't hesitate to call us again. I thanked him, feeling a mix of relief and lingering fear. After they left, I locked all the doors and turned on every light in the house. I couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability. I decided to call my parents, who were still on their trip. When I told them what happened, they were understandably worried. My mom insisted that I stay on the phone with her until they could get home. I appreciated her concern, but I also wanted to feel independent. The next few days were tense. I found it hard to relax in my own home. I kept replaying the events in my mind, wondering what could have happened if the police hadn't arrived in time. I avoided going out alone, even during the day, and I started to feel a bit paranoid about every noise I heard. One evening, a few days later, I decided to invite some friends over. I thought it would help me feel more at ease. They brought snacks, games, and laughter, and for a while, I forgot about the fear that had gripped me. We played video games and watched movies, and I felt a sense of normalcy returning. As the night wore on, I heard a knock at the door. My heart raced, and I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me. I glanced at my friends, who looked just as confused. "Who could that be?" one of them asked. I hesitated, remembering the man from a few nights ago. I cautiously approached the door and looked through the peephole. To my relief, it was Officer Martinez and another officer. I opened the door, feeling a mix of gratitude and nervousness. "We just wanted to check in on you," Officer Martinez said with a friendly smile. "How have you been feeling since the incident?" I invited them in, and we chatted for a while. They reassured me that the man had been taken into custody and that he wouldn't be a threat anymore. They also encouraged me to keep my phone close and to reach out if I ever felt uneasy again. Their visit made me feel safer, and I appreciated their kindness. As the weeks went by, I slowly regained my confidence. I started going out again, but I was more aware of my surroundings. I even took a self-defense class, which empowered me and helped me feel more in control. My friends supported me through it all, and I realized how important it was to have a strong support system. One night, while I was out with friends, I spotted a familiar face in the crowd. It was Officer Martinez, off-duty but still in uniform. He waved at me, and I felt a sense of comfort knowing that there were people looking out for me. I waved back, feeling grateful for the help I had received during that scary time. Eventually, I moved on from the incident, but it stayed with me as a reminder to trust my instincts and to be aware of my surroundings. I learned that even in moments of fear, there can be kindness and support from others. And while I would always be cautious, I also knew that I was stronger than I had realized. That summer, I not only enjoyed my time alone in the house, but also grew into a more confident and aware person. I was ready to face whatever challenges came my way, knowing that I had the strength to overcome them.